Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship. My name is, I'm called Mother Indrani, and we're here discussing books by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. She has a series of books, spiritual warrior books, reflections, beggar, and they're to help us to grow, help us to really look at ourselves as to who we are, who the Lord is, and how to use that knowledge to function while we're still in this material world, and to prepare us for going home back to Godhead eventually. Last time I was here, I told you about Harinam Press, where his books are published, and they have a website, and that Hari is H-A-R-I, Nama, N-A-M-A, all one word, press.org. And the reason I'm bringing it up again, because as I told you, you can purchase these books at Krishna.com. But on that website, I looked at it again. For each book, they give you the table of contents, the summary, an excerpt from the book. And there's one more thing, I think they show you the back cover of the book. It's really done well. And if you are interested in what's in each book, if you don't have the books as yet, that's a good way to get a sense of what it's about, because you'll have the table of contents. So I put that pitch out. So here we are on another Thursday night, and I'm welcoming you, whoever's out there. Are people in the chat room?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm glad to see that. One night, remember, she kept saying no, no, no. And I remember all I could think is just keep going, because Gurudev is listening and watching. But I'm glad you're there, and I welcome you. We have been the past week or two discussing from Spiritual Warrior 3, Chapter 6, the Spiritual Warrior's View of the World. As I went back to find where I left off, which is quite interesting all the time, and where to begin today, it's like, how did you get here to Spiritual Warrior 3, Chapter 6? And I remembered that where I got that urge to go, insight or whatever, the Lord in the heart saying, okay, after you do this, better go there. And that's so wonderful about listening to the voice within. And you know, I like to do reviews off and on, and sometimes they take most of the time, but I need it. And I don't know where you are in your hearing and coming and visiting. And if you don't have the book, maybe sometimes you want to hear it again. So I may be moving about a bit, because what I'm going to do is to go back to where we were before we got to where we are. How does that make sense? Remember when we were reading Spiritual Warrior 6, and we were in the chapter, The Positive and Negative Effects of War, and Bhakti Tirtha Swami, brought up the need, spiritual warriorship. I'm not going to go through all of that. What I'm going to do, I want to read the section entitled The Necessity of Spiritual Warriorship. Okay? Because before we looked at the weapons, battleground, and goal of spiritual warrior. If you've been with us a while, you may have those down, and if not, send me an email or make a comment, and we will review them again, because this is important. So let's just review what he says about the necessity of spiritual warriorship, because as he used to tell us when he would give a class, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to share something with you for your consciousness and betterment. So he tells us that if the lifestyle that we want is always escaping our grasp, maybe it is because we haven't yet mastered the art of spiritual warriorship. I like that. The art of spiritual warriorship. Now, we've been endeavoring to bring that art to you for over a year. And I know some of you are new and some of you have been there, which I'm thankful for. So it's good to kind of review and think about. He tells us that in these days and times, the art of spiritual warriorship is essential to those who want to experience personal fulfillment. And isn't that what we're all seeking if we're on a spiritual path? Not only do we want to experience personal fulfillment, we want to experience loving relationships. And really, we want to experience overall well-being. In a world, this world, that's really riddled with negative influences that degrade our consciousness. And we know it's pretty rough out there. So spiritual warrior, he says, is no longer a recreational sport. Or a luxury. It is actually a strategy for survival. And that's what in the madness is the negative influences out there. We need to survive. Now, that strategy for survival, especially for those who want to avoid toxic thought patterns and their devastating after effects. See, some people, as we stated, in the beginning of the other book, there were two types of happy people, fools and transcendentals. Some people really think all this negative stuff, they're happy in it. And there are others that are saying, I'm tired, I'm sick and tired of this. I want something different in my life. I want change. A great number of spiritually evolved souls and seekers recognize the need to resist a common pitfall and plagues that so many in our society have us battled down almost. But he tells us that unbridled lust is, of course, our most, is the element that causes the most harm. So we have to keep in mind that many causes of negative obsessions stem from lust. So purifying methodically, like those found, methodologies like those found in his books, these books we've been reading. And if you've been with us, we've taken from all of the spiritual warrior books. And we've spent time with them. And I don't know if you remember, I would like, if you feel so inclined, those who do go into the chat room, maybe just let me know if you have yourself a spiritual warrior book or were inclined towards trying to get one to go deeper after hearing. I'm just curious. So he tells us purifying methodologies like those found in this book and his previous books of spiritual warriors. So found in his spiritual warrior books are purifying methodologies. You can't wait, right, to go online and order all of the 6 of them in 6 spiritual warrior books. Or to maybe pick up the one you have on your shelf and begin reading it, taking it seriously in your life because it's for purification. And he says that this series, they're critically important. The approaches that we get can profoundly alter the fatal attraction and habitual patterns of self-deceit from which so many people are now suffering. Okay? He reminds us that if conventional warriors, and we know they're out there, would learn to have appreciation, value, and love for those they desire to fight or annihilate, their combative mood would disappear. Huh? Can you imagine that? Just having a sense of a more appreciation and love and value for the other people. It can change things. But remember, he built us up ready for spiritual warriorship, but he also reminded us what? Do you remember? That the path of spiritual warrior is not easy. He tells us that through these books, the spiritual warrior books, he's trying to address material, metaphysical, and spiritual concerns to help with the discipline of spiritual warriorship. And if you've read his books or have been listening, he touches all of those aspects. He says we want to solve material problems with spiritual solutions. And we want to go beyond the point of just having peace solely for ourselves. We want to go beyond our own meditation, chanting, praying, yoga, and nutrition. We also want to go beyond just thinking about change, becoming active in the role we can play in making the world a better place. We must think of others. That's where that selflessness comes in one of the qualities of a spiritual warrior. He tells us that the path of a spiritual warrior is not an easy path. What does it demand? It demands courage. I feel like sitting up straight when I say good to sit up straight. It demands courage, determination, discipline, intense compassion, and unconditional love. It requires an understanding that the world is not the final chapter. If you've been with us, we hit on that in what we're going to go back to in Spiritual Warrior 3. But do you understand, it's not a time for wimpishness. It's really a time to stand tall, gain the knowledge you need so you can face the enemies, as this book has been talking about, the war. So that means that we are on a mission. Spiritual warriors, we're on a mission. Spiritual warriors undergo adversity and challenge. However, in a positive and equipoised state of mind, they see the challenges as purifying. If you've been here, where did we read? We touched on that in one of the other books. In fact, I think when we were on the chapter about what is suffering or why do we suffer, and he tells us we have to see that sometimes that suffering is coming from God to purify us so that we can become closer to him and be strong in this adverse world. So he tells us that spiritual warriors, obstacles that they have, it should push you to what? Achieve higher. Accelerate faster. And try harder. Think about that. If you've been changing your consciousness and endeavoring to try and follow some of the methodologies we've talked about and tools he's given us, he calls them, and techniques and technologies, and you've endeavored and have been trying to put them in your life, and you'll see some adversities coming or up in your face kind of thing, but you can move through it. That's why he's just giving us the sense that you don't wimp down. You stand tall with what? Courage and determination. So he says that you want to try harder, accelerate faster. And he gives the example that even gold, which is one of the most valuable and costly of metals, is brought to its glory by what? By fire. The diamond, the most precious of gems, is formed by intense pressure and heat. So spiritual warriorship is similar. Thus, a spiritual warrior should thrive on intensity. The more our desire to help and make a change flourishes, the more we will want to be a part of the struggle. Now, after hearing that, you might say, I don't quite know if I want to go along with this spiritual warrior thing. I don't know how much courage I have. I don't know, you could go into one of those. But please don't. And he tells us in the very next paragraph that spiritual warriors are not alone. So see, if you were getting that in your head, throw it out. Because you are not doing this work and going through these adversities alone. They're to encourage you, as we said, to achieve higher, to accelerate fast and to try harder. And he then tells us that we're not alone. Spiritual warriors are not alone. Why? Because they carry the Supreme Lord in their hearts. The Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita tells you, I'm in everyone's heart. Believe that? Trust that. Acharyas, devas, and angels guard and guide the spiritual warriors. And the residents of the spiritual world cheer them as heroes and heroines on their journey back to the transcendental realm. So isn't it worth what? So just as a conventional warfare person receives supplies and resources and encouragement and honors, spiritual warriors are backed up by angelic hosts. Do you want to join the ranks of this transcendental army? If so, you must take a stand. You must make a choice. So from there, it was like, I can't come out there and check how many of you are ready to join this army. But I went on to how a spiritual warrior views the world. Because if you're new to this these methodologies, techniques, or even Bhaktitirtha Swami's style of encouraging you and putting it right in your face and then telling you how to wipe your face and keep going. So we went, as I said, to Spiritual Warrior 3, Chapter 6, A Spiritual Warrior's View of the World. Now, I don't know how many of you have been with us, but I'm going to put out a few questions. If you're making notes, you can make note and try to answer them if you remember because this is what we've already gone over. And if not, think about it, because the Lord being in the heart can help us. Now, what we went over a couple of times, and I'm going to just put these out. Name the 2 categories of people that are happy in the material world. And what are the skills we as spiritual warriors must develop? What are the skills? We talked about that. And then the answer to this one is my favorite. I'm going to read it later. If we are not these physical bodies, what are we? And what is this body? Okay, I'll stop there with questions. I hope you will think about that and maybe remember an answer. So now, before I get to where we're to start, I will quickly review and you may get the answer. But one thing I wanted to review was he tells us that the spirit material world is impermanent and constantly changing. The material world. So there's some skills spiritual warriors need. First, we must develop as spiritual warriors what we must develop as spiritual warriors is equipoise in the face of constant change and apparent chaos. And that can happen on any battleground, anywhere, wherever you are. Going to work, going to school, at home. Apparent chaos. But you remain equipoised. Then we must not become overly proud in a moment of happiness. Like, oh, I got this right, I did this, and now I'm happy. Huh? Be careful. If it wasn't for me, things wouldn't be so good. Be careful. And we must not become overly fearful in a moment of distress. And after what we just heard before, that we're not alone, if you can remember that the Supreme Lord is in your heart, always with you, then you can really put that skill into practice. Because happiness and distress will come of their own accord for as long as we reside. Okay? So if we've got that, and then he takes us to the next step of what did he remind us? We are not the body. If not, then who are we, Miss Lady? We are fundamentally spiritual, transcendental, anti-material entities. And if I'm all of that, why am I going through? Because we are simply using these physical bodies as vehicles. Each body is like a garment. or ventriloquist dummy. Remember ventriloquist man? So without the spiritual spark within, our flesh is absolutely lifeless. So we heard we're in a temporary realm here in this body. Okay? So where did we go next? I think that was enough of the reviewing. I hope you can get this book, The Spiritual Warrior 3. They're all great. I love this one because it has the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. But I don't know if the office is still open on harinampress.org, but they say if you go and you sign up for their newsletter or whatever, you'll get a free copy of the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. So he then brings us, he's telling us the world is, for this world we're in, realm is temporary, always changing. He reminds us that we're not the body, that we're really spirit, soul, transcendental, anti-material in this material body. But then he tells us while we're in this body, what comes along and makes it harder for us to function, but still, always when he tells us that, he tells us how to get out. So in these hideous, self-gratifying times, most people do not want to hear that the material world is a place for tests and lessons. Why? Most people think it's a place to have fun, enjoy. But the kaleidoscopic aspect of this world piques our curiosity. And most people simply want to sample and enjoy all the temptations nature has to offer. Yet so many of these so-called pleasures truly endanger us once we have tasted them. That's when we get to that point. You hear it, I'm so tired of this, I'm sick and tired of this, I don't want this anymore. Now, different spiritual traditions represent these material temptations in various ways. While we find reference in the Bible to Satan as a personification of evil opposed to the Lord and determined to capture souls into his service, the Vedic scriptures refer to Maya as a personification of the material illusion. Now, rather than opposing the Lord, she is a servant whose thankless task is to offer the conditioned souls all kinds of sugar-coated poisons to test and ultimately reform us, teaching us the hard way until we develop the good judgment and discrimination not to stray from the path of true happiness. Now, just as a soldier must learn to identify the uniform and equipment of the enemy and become familiar with the enemy's tactics, the spiritual warrior must learn to discern the attacks of harmful and degrading influences of all circumstances. To see, what is this coming at me? What is this in front of me? This person is saying, come, go with me. Oh, you'll have so much fun. Discriminate, huh? Discern. What is this about? Is this going to help me? to the fulfillment I'm really seeking? Is this going to help me to know God better? Is this going to help me to act and care for others better? We should, of course, not become paranoid or allow our fears to rule us. And remember, one of the qualities of a spiritual warrior is what? Fearlessness. And how can that be? Because, as he said, we get to know that we're backed up by the Supreme. And that takes time of gathering, understanding, studying, getting the knowledge of who you are and who God is and the Supreme is and your relationship with Him. So on the other hand, we're not going to let our fears rule us, but on the other hand, if we are not attuned to the devastating power of our adversary, we may not resist intensely enough to be victorious. I like the way that may not resist intensely enough to be victorious. Hey, come with me over here. You know what's happening? No, I don't think I really want to go. But listen, if you go, you will. Blah 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 blah. No, I have some reading to do, or no. Come on, what's your trouble, huh? I told you no, I don't want to go with you now. I have other things to do. Or, okay, I'll go with you this time, but just for a little while. So he says, if we're not attuned to the devastating power of our adversary, we may not resist intensely enough to be victorious. So think on that. Now Maya first tries to get everyone actively engaged in destructive, harmful activities. For those who cannot be captivated so easily, Maya tries to make individuals feel overwhelmed, isolated, and hopeless, to the point of believing that it is impossible to make a change, or pointless to try. In this way, even those who are not grossly materialistic are still kept in check. Now, many of us go through these feelings. Do we ever stop to think that it's Maya? And you know, as we said, she's a servant of the Lord, and really has a thankless job, because our purpose of being here in this material world, in a human body, is to be able to question and to search for higher, and to reach that higher so that we can leave and really never have to come back again and go through everything. So it's like you can't go back home, back to God, with a lot of junk and nonsense, baggage. So her job is to put in front of you and bring to you whatever will bring up or show you where you need to work to get stronger. And most times when you're feeling overwhelmed and isolated and hopeless, you don't stop to see, how can I learn from this, and why am I allowing this to happen? Yes, you want to?
I have a question.
You have a question, yes.
How do we attune ourselves to say Maya that we've never experienced, or do we, like,
Well,
Do we have to experience it to attune ourselves?
No, if you are studying, and as he said in the other reading, and seeing the methodologies that he's given in technologies, before he gives it, he tells you what may cause it. Just even for me, reading this, it becomes clear that when this feeling of being overwhelmed about something, isolated, and it's almost hopeless, and believing that it's impossible to make change, because I've been there, it's not the correct. Because, again, if we know who we are as, what did I say, transcendental, anti-material, spiritual beings, and we have this knowledge, we will look at it in a different way. Yes, and you don't deny it. Right now I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling hopeless, but this is not the natural way for me to feel. Let me look at what may be causing it. And if you've been studying and hearing, even from hearing Bhagavatam, you're going to hear of acharyas or devotees who've gone through this and somehow reconnected or opened themselves to receive help in that. So, I didn't think of it as saying that's Maya. This is clarifying for me that those feelings, it's just her endeavoring to test you to see if you're ready to keep going on and get past these things, or else if you get stuck in that kind of feelings and all, you're stuck and stagnant and you're not endeavoring to transcend, and then you're not ready to go home. He says everyone residing in a material body is a target. And before we become too angry with Maya, though, as honest spiritual warriors, we must accept the fact that we have gotten ourselves into this predicament. We have gotten ourselves into this predicament. The very fact that we are in material bodies means that we at some point ran away from God's love. The fact that we are in material bodies means that we at some point ran away from God's love. We have rejected our natural state as loving servants of the Lord. Choosing, we have choice. That free will's been there with us all along. Choosing instead the confines of the material realm. In this realm, material realm, we cannot forget for a while that we're not equal to God. And we can pretend to own, create, dominate, and destroy as we please. Although this choice is literally our God-given right, the unavoidable consequence is that we must be confined to the material world and complete compete for dominance with others of the same degraded delusion mindset. How do you like that? The weight is on you. If you're going through all this stuff, huh? He tells us we have to accept the fact that we have gotten ourselves into this predicament. Now, this doesn't mean if you are accepting this and realizing and going through that, you don't go on a pity party now. Oh, poor me, I got myself in this, what I gonna do? No, you're being given methodologies, tools, technologies. And it started with him telling you who you are in just about every book he reminds us. And the importance of gaining knowledge, the importance of studying, the importance of interacting with people of higher consciousness. That's mastering the mind. So instead of viewing Maya as an evil opponent bent on our destruction, we can then begin to see her more as a warden of this material prison. Huh? And what does a warden do? Make sure you stay locked up. Unless you have proven or shown that you have learned how to control yourself and your behavior and everything, and then you do get pardoned, paroled, the first parole and then released. That's a nice thing. More of a warden of the material prison. And she's charged with keeping us contained until what? Until we decide we have had enough of this realm and the shadows. She can then teach and challenge us until we prove beyond a doubt that our only desire is to return to our natural position in service to the Lord. So you gotta go through this stuff to realize you don't want any more of this stuff. Of course, in the very beginning, he tells us there's two kinds of happy people, fools and transcendental. And fools just think, well, whatever's going on, oh, I'm happy, whoop-de-whoop. But when you get tired of it, when you say, I've had enough, you begin to make change. You're guided to a teacher, to a friend, to a book, to show you that there is a way out. And these books, as he said, they give you techniques, technologies to move beyond. So he says, we have been provided with ample help along the way. Huh? The religious scriptures of the world have not been given to us for entertainment. Huh? They are literally instruction manuals to help us make the most of our human existence and attain our parole back to the spiritual world. These lessons are designed to teach us the rules of the material and spiritual worlds and provide us with the tools to begin making better decisions. Right? Ball's in our court. We make the decision. We make the choices. And we're not doing it alone. Spiritual warriors are not alone. The Lord is in our hearts, He just told us. If He's there, He will speak to us and guide us when we decide we're tired of trying to be Him. And we cry for help. Having received these tools, each of us individually must make a conscious choice. A conscious choice to employ them, the tools, to conquer our self-centered desires and pass Maya's tests as they come. Huh? So all is not lost. It's always helpful. I'm going to stop there. See if there are any questions, comments. How many people in the chat room? Are people in there?
Mm-hmm.
Any comments? Any questions? Any familiar faces? Faces. Oh, I wish I could see you face to face.
Sunil from Holland is here. Bhaktin Shruti, Bhuvan Mohan, and Adi.
Adi has been. Where's Adi from? Located. The name is familiar. I think some time ago. Hi, Adi. I'm trying to recollect. And I thank you all for being there. Do any of you have any comments, questions? As I've said before, I don't know if you're shy or if you know it already and repeating. If you don't have any questions or comments, if you want to write to me individually, I'm at Mother Indrani 108 at gmail.com. Did Adi respond? Mm-hmm. No. Still there though? Mm-hmm. Okay, Adi. I'm just curious as to where you are, because the name sounds familiar. Anybody else? No. No comment, no question. Okay, I gave you some questions for homework. Maybe, and I think we went over enough that you may be able to answer. Here's one, just finished. How does Maya try to make the individual feel? There's a question. Okay.
Bhuvan Mohan asks, does everyone have equal opportunity to overcome Maya, or does the Lord play favorites with some people?
I don't know what verse Bhagavad Gita the Lord says He's equal to everyone. He doesn't have any favorites, and everyone has the choice. As we've been reading, has the choice and can make the decision for change, because the material, the tools, if you will, are available, especially if one is interested in spiritual life, if one is paying attention to what's going on in their consciousness and their heart, they will feel or really know, as we've said, that they've had enough of what's going on. And once that declaration is made, help comes. So the Lord is there to help us all, because why? We're all His parts and parcels. But we have to know that our constitutional position, and I think we just read natural position, is as His servant. He is not our servant. And as we serve Him, endeavor to serve Him, we get the help we need. He sends the help. Sometimes it's a book. Sometimes it's a phone call from a friend. Or sometimes it's It's a flyer handed to you on the street. That's how I came back in 1990. I didn't know what to do with my life, where I was going or what. And I got a flyer, and I knew I was interested in spiritual life, and I didn't even remember all that I saw on it, but it said, I saw spiritual. And I went to the meeting. And that's when I began to hear about the Supreme Lord. And it was like my soul was rejoicing. So the help is there for us. And we have to, as he said, it's up to us. If we have to make the decision, if we're tired of it, or if we're going to be like the fool we spoke about who really thinks they're still enjoying. I hope that answers. That a help? Sometimes I have to hear the question more than once.
He said yes, thank you.
It helped. Okay. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. Remember now, we're in Spiritual Warrior 3. Consider, if you don't have it, to try and get it. We're in Chapter 6, and we're looking at a spiritual warrior's view of the world. Next week, I'm going to tell you where I want to go, so if I don't, you can catch me up. The 3 modes of material nature and reincarnation, fact and fiction. But I hope you have gotten something from tonight's discussion and reading that you can imbibe, apply in your everyday life and practice. If it's maybe just seeing what temptations, in quotes, come to you in your desire to be a spiritual warrior, and know that this is something you may need to work on, or this is something you may need to develop more courage and determination to stay on the path. Or if it's just practicing and repeating, fundamentally getting to know who you are. You're spiritual. You're transcendental. You're anti-material entity who's simply using a physical body as a vehicle to do the work, to begin the purifying, the cleansing, to be able to say no to Maya and stand firm, so eventually you'll be able to return to your rightful abode. Okay? So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Hare Krishna, God bless you, and thank you for being there. Hari Hari Bol.